everyone, today I'm going to show you how to make this Panettone Babka. It's a cross between a traditional panettone and a cinnamon babka, and I like to call it a Panebabka. So let's get started and I'll show you how to make this wonderful holiday bread. So the first thing we want to do is mix up our dough, and this is my normal sweet dough. I start with my bread flour blend and I'm going to add in sugar, salt, baking powder, and yeast. And then we mix this all together and put it on the mixer. If you don't have a stand mixer, you can try a handheld mixer with the dough hook attachments. I'm not sure if it will work. I've never tried it before. Now I'm adding milk, and I'll add 2 eggs in. I'm just going to beat them first. And then add butter. You can add the butter as melted butter or really soft butter. As long as it's not room temperature or cold, it needs to be a little softer than room temperature or it will not mix in properly. Unless your room is really warm. So when it's done, it's going to be more like a thick cake batter or almost like a cookie batter, which is totally normal, so don't be alarmed. Just scrape the sides down and into like a one mass in the middle of the bowl. You can also transfer this to another bowl and cover it if you don't have too many mixing bowls. I happen to have 3, so I'm okay to leave this right in my mixing bowl. And then I cover it with a shower cap just to save on single-use plastics. But just as long as you cover it with something and put it in a warm, draft-free area to rise for about 2 hours. And afterwards, it goes into the fridge and it's going to look like that. I'm only going to use half this dough for this 1 loaf of bread. So you can either have the dough when you're first making it, or you can just cut it in half like I just did here, because you can never have too much of this dough laying around. There's always something that could be made with this dough. Just check my website, you'll find all kinds of things. So just knead it on a well-floured surface. The flour I'm using is also my bread flour blend. Just make extra. And then once you knead it a little bit, add in your candied citrus. So here I have orange peel, which is my absolute favorite, citron, which is a special kind of, it's like a large, huge lime, but it's kind of a cross between a lime and a lemon, I think. Anyway, it's really good. And lemon, of course. And all of these are going to go in mine. A little bit of lemon, I would say a 1/4 cup or so. And then same with the citron. And then as far as the orange, I'm going to put in like 1/2 cup because I really love the orange. The orange is my favorite. But you do whatever you want, whatever makes you happy. Add as much or as little as you like. You don't want to add so much. I would say a total of 1 cup of whatever mixture you want. If you like lemon more, add more lemon peel. And then just knead that through. You may have to add a little more flour because of the stickiness of the fruit is going to cause the dough to be sticky as well. Now at this point, you could knead in some raisins and just put this in a loaf pan and call it a loaf of panettone. But I wanted to take it a step further and make it into a cross between a panettone and a babka. And that's where I came up with this because I love the swirls that babkas make. I think they're just so pretty in a loaf of bread, and I just wanted to try it out, and I really loved the outcome. So roll this out, and it's to about 1/4 of an inch thick. Make sure to add flour if it's sticking as you're rolling it out, just a little bit. One thing that I think people get really scared of is adding too much flour in their gluten-free doughs. This dough can really handle it. It really can. It's not going to make it tough. In fact, it doesn't yield any abnormalities whatsoever by adding extra flour. I know with gluten-filled dough, it will make the bread tough because it overworks the gluten. Okay, so now I'm adding the cinnamon sugar filling, which is just cinnamon, brown sugar, butter, and a little bit, about a tablespoon of cornstarch, which will help keep the filling from oozing out completely. It kind of thickens it up, allows it to stay right in the rolls where they belong. So just spread this out. It's not a lot of filling because we already have a lot going on. We don't need a ton of filling. These aren't cinnamon rolls. This is a cinnamon babka meets a panettone. So just do your best to spread this out as thin as possible that you can. In this video, you're going to see that I forgot to add the raisins at this point. But after you smooth this out, you will be adding raisins. If you like raisins, that is. If you don't like raisins, then leave them out. But raisins are a traditional panettone addition, and I love them in panettone and in all kinds of bread anyway. But you're going to see here that I did not put them in. So I actually had to unroll my loaf and re-roll it. But we're just going to pretend, add your raisins now before you roll it up. So start rolling at one end and try to get it as tightly as possible. You don't have to be super tight, but you definitely don't want to roll it real loosely. And it's very forgiving. It's a very forgiving dough. It's so much like regular gluten dough. You are just gonna love it. See how nicely that rolls up. And then we're gonna try, with all the additions in, it's sometimes hard to seal the ends, but do your best to pinch the ends together. And then flip it over. And now what we're going to do is cut this in half. Again, you don't have to do this part. I just like the contrast of the finished product, and I'll show you what I mean. So we're going to take these two halves, we're going to put them on a baking sheet and get them into the freezer for 20 to 30 minutes, or until they're stiff enough to where they'll be so much easier to shape and work with. So these are right out of the freezer, and as you can see, I've added my raisins. One of them got a little smush, but you can tell just by how I'm handling it how stiff they are. It just makes it so much easier for shaping. So we're going to take one of them and use our bench scraper or a really sharp knife and cut it in half lengthwise to expose the inside. And now what we do is we want to piece together kind of, just turn it inside out to where the insides are on the outside. And then start braiding it with the entire roll. And you're just going to get two textures from this. You don't have to do this. You can just leave the entire thing whole and braid it. You can cut the entire portion in half, whatever you want to do. I just personally liked this look. Now I'm using my bench scraper to help assist in getting it into the loaf pan that I've lined with greased parchment paper. And then we just cover it with plastic wrap and let it proof in a warm, draft-free area for maybe 1 to 2 hours or until doubled in size. You actually want it to double in size. You want it pretty high above the loaf pan. And see how well that's risen. So now we're going to preheat our oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. And we will wash this with an egg wash. Or brush this, excuse me. Brush this with an egg wash. And bake it for about 30 minutes, 30 to 35 minutes, or until a long skewer inserted into the center comes out mostly clean. If it has like crumbs or filling on it, that's fine. If it's still wet, like a wet dough looking, then you need to leave it in for another 5 minutes and check again. And here is the baked loaf of Panebabka, my own creation. Doesn't it look so pretty? Look at, you can see the swirls on the end. See how those swirls are in there from half of it? I actually prefer this to a regular panettone. And it's actually so much easier because you don't have to guess if the inside is done yet because they are so tall. Look at that. It's so good. It's soft, it's moist. You can eat it just plain like this. You can toast it and add butter to it. It's really good toasted. You can even cut it real thick and make French toast out of it. Or leftover, you can make bread pudding out of it. There are so many things you can do with this. It is so fun, y'all. I hope you like it as much as I do. Be sure to check out my website for plenty more recipes.